Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Scotland and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a couple of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, a few different styles, but I think it's fair to describe this brewery as one of the more kind of traditional and session beer type craft breweries here in Scotland. Their beers are very readily accessible, you can find them in quite a lot of supermarkets across the country, and they are definitely worth trying if you get the chance. Now, the beer that we're going to have a look at today is one of their newer additions to their core range, I guess we could say, and it is supposed to be quite nice actually, so I'm curious to see what it's going to have in store for us. So hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to a little place called Coilu, which is on the Orkney Islands, the first set of the two sets of islands off the north coast. And we are going to have a look at another beer from the Orkney Brewery. So this particular beer is called Island Life. It comes in at 3.7% ABV, and they're describing this one as a session IPA. So yeah, not sure exactly when they released this one, but I think it was within the last year or so, something like that. But yeah, these guys have got a few long-standing beers that I would always recommend. That would be Northern Light and Dark Island. Skull Splitter is also a very, very good one if you want something a wee bit more kind of strong and malty actually. But yeah, Northern Light's a lovely kind of golden ale, and the Dark Island is a kind of stout beer, a light sort of stout actually, if I remember correctly, but it's lovely, lovely beer, and those two are very, very easy to find, so make sure you check them out. But yeah, as I say, this one is one of their newer additions to the core range from what I gather. But let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. Always nice to return to these guys when the opportunity arises. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from the Orkney Brewery before, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Scottish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, usually when I'm back home in the motherland of Scotland, of course. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then, to tell you a little bit about the Orkney Isles and the Orkney Brewery, of course. So one of the things you should know about the Orkney and Shetland Islands before we get started is that they both have a very significant Norse Viking heritage, and this can be seen in some of the place names. For example, St Magnus Cathedral in Kirkwall, which is the sort of capital town, if you like, of the Orkney Islands. But many streets also bear Norse names, and incidentally these islands only became Scottish back in the year 1468. And of course, if you remember that Scotland was kind of born in 843 when King Kenneth MacAlpin defeated Athelstan, it kind of shows you that they are a later addition to Scotland, of course, which is kind of cool. But the brewery itself, the Orkney Brewery, is owned by a guy called Norman Sinclair, and he is an award-winning hotelier with various properties around Scotland, but he was born in Orkney and moved to Fort William at a young age. In 2006, though, he set up his new company, which was called Sinclair Breweries Limited, and this acquired two breweries. First was the Orkney Brewery, and then there was the Atlas Brewery. So the Orkney Brewery was originally founded in March of 1988 by Roger White at the Old Schoolhouse in Sandwick in Orkney in Scotland. But the Atlas Brewery was found in Kinlochleven on the mainland back in 2002 by Neil Cotton, and they merged with Orkney Brewery in 2004 under the name Highlands and Islands Breweries. But this came about due to the retirement of Roger White and the subsequent acquisition of the shares by Atlas Brewery. So Neil Cotton served as the managing director of Highlands and Islands Brewery for a period of time, and he drove a series of changes at the Orkney Brewery. But then this kind of umbrella company, if you like, or this kind of joint company, we should say, was purchased by Sinclair Breweries in 2006. So since then, the brewery has continued to grow, but they're still based in the same old schoolhouse in Coilu, which is just a mile from the famous Neolithic sites. And they've got 3 employees who are involved with the brewing of the beer. So the head brewer is Andrew Fulton, who's a graduate of the famous brewing programme at Heriot-Watt University. He joined the brewery back in 1994. There is Kevin Sarling, who is from South London, and he'd been involved in the transport business before taking up brewing before 2005. And there's also Magnus Flett, who is a former farmer from Harry, and he joined the brewery back in 2001. But over the years, they've continued to scale up the brewery and grow their production, and as of March 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 25 different kinds of beer. And like I said, whenever I think of Orkney Brewery, I always think of just, kind of more traditional, light, sessionable beers. And I would say that these guys are one of the better breweries in that particular side of things here in Scotland. As I say, the Northern Light, the Dark Island are very, very nice kind of sessionable beers. And of course, if you want something a wee bit stronger, you can of course check out the Skull Splitter, the Scotch ale, and that is an awesome beer actually. I do still need to try the Dark Island Reserve. I've seen bottles of that floating around in Glasgow, but it's one that I've just never really gotten around to reviewing actually. So that is one that I will try and make sure that I review at some point this year when I'm home. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about the Orkney Brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys though, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit about all the different beers that these guys have done. But yeah, hopefully I can get up to the Orkney Islands at some point. It'd be really cool to do a sort of meet the brewery with some of these guys. I would absolutely love to do that, because it'd be very, very cool to do something like that in one of the more remote areas of Scotland actually. I've never been up to Orkney or Shetland, so definitely something that I need to try and do within the next couple of years. So yeah, let's leave it at that for the history section. Let's get on and actually take a look at the beer itself. So as you can see, the artwork on this one is very nice, but quite similar in style to what we've seen from the Orkney Brewery previously. If we bring that in, that is the Orkney Brewery badge there, and that is also on the bottle cap of this beer. So there you go. I do quite like that. But yeah, this is a half-litre bottle. I believe this cost me like £2 or something like that, maybe a little bit less. I think it was about £2 that I paid for this bottle in my local Tesco, so that translates to roughly €2.50, about 25 Swedish kronor for those of you watching over there, and maybe somewhere in the region of what, like $3 American, something like that. So not bad. But yeah, as we said earlier, it's a 3.7% session IPA. It tells you on the back here, Island Life is a special beer, much like life on our islands. Orkney has been regularly recognised as one of the finest places to live in the British Isles. So like the easygoing enjoyment of your personal island retreat, take your time, relax and indulge. Island Life is a pale golden ale with citrus fruit aromas, mouth-watering flavours of grapefruit and peach lead to a crisp, zesty bitter finish to be enjoyed time and time again. Pairs well with oat smoked seafood, pasta and light snacks. So yeah, should be good. So yeah, let's crack this guy open and we'll see how we go on. The only other things I can tell you from the website is that this beer is hopped with Citra, Cascade and El Dorado. And yeah, we know all those hops quite well. Cascade, of course, all three of them are American. Cascade, of course, is the original one, 8% alpha acid. It gives you this lovely kind of grapefruity, but also a kind of figgy note, I feel. Citra, 14% alpha acid, usually gives you big mango notes, but also quite a nice big lemony zesty character. And El Dorado is a slightly newer one that comes in, I think, about 12% alpha acid, but it gives you, quite a big passion fruity. No, actually, big passion fruity and mango qualities. So this should turn out to be quite interesting. But let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting then. The Island Life 3.7% ABV from Orkney Brewery in Coilou, Orkney, Scotland. Let's do this. Here we are. So this should be quite nice. I've had this beer in the fridge since the last time I was home, so it should still be okay. There we go, that's about 2/3 of a pint for the moment, and we can put the rest in a wee bitty later on. So, yes, as you can see, crystal clear beer. So before the head disappears on this one, you can see that it's poured with about a 2/3 finger of a frothy, I would say cream coloured head there. There are one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there, but overall it does look pretty nice. But as you can see, crystal clear beer, unfiltered, filtered I should say. crystal clear beer, filtered, that would make sense. But yeah, remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar's caramelised, thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put in will affect the colour of the beer as well. But when it comes to a session IPA like this, you don't often have to care about that. But yeah, this is one of the things to point out as well. So it did actually say in the website, they were describing this one as like a golden pale ale. Now, as far as I can gather, the main difference between a session IPA and a pale ale is this. So the pale ale, the IPA, the double IPA and the barley wine, these 4 styles of beer are all linked together based on the differences in the hop to malt ratio. So basically, a pale ale has 1 hop to malt ratio and IPA has the other. And what they do with a session IPA is that they take the malt content down so that it's lower in alcohol, but they maintain the IPA hop to malt ratio, whereas a pale ale has a completely different hop to malt ratio. So that's one of the things about this. On the website, as I say, they're describing this as a pale ale, which has a different hop to malt ratio than a session IPA, which they're saying on the bottle this one is. So I'm not 100% sure exactly what we're going to expect from this beer. But I say, you know, to be honest, a session IPA and a pale ale, they can be quite similar in terms of their flavour composition. But that's just a little bit of technical knowledge that we should mention there, because I noticed that when I was looking at the website. The brewer was saying it was a pale ale, whereas it's being marketed as a session IPA. So bear that in mind when you get this one. But yeah, anyway, in terms of what you'd expect though from a pale ale, this one, it kind of comes across as more of a sort of American West Coast pale ale in terms of appearance. But remember, the pale ale is a style that originated in England, of course. So yeah, certainly looks the part as to regarding what we would expect from this kind of beer, especially from a kind of Scottish traditional brewery, if you like. So nothing else I think that we really need to say about the appearance of this one. Let's have a closer look at the aroma though and just see what we get out of it. Oh yeah, that is nice. It really does remind me of a number of the other beers we've had from Orkney Brewery in the past. I think it's just the type of malts that they use. I think they use a little bit of local malt, but also the likes of Maris Otter and things like that as well. And because it's just, these beers always have just this really distinctive bready character. And the Orkney Brewery ones also smell quite similar to some of the Williams Brothers ones that we get here that are from my kind of area in Clackmannanshire. So yeah, this one really reminds me of some of the Williams Brothers beers that I've had in the past actually. But I'm going to say I love this smell. I love these the kind of lighter, more session beers that we get here in Scotland. I've always said though, you know, when it comes to English traditional beer, I'm not a great fan of the golden ales and the pale ales and stuff like that. For me, English traditional beer is all about the dark beer. But for some reason, I actually do quite enjoy, compared to the English ones, I really do enjoy the Scottish golden ales. But yeah, of course, the some of the stouts and Scotch ales and stuff like that you get up here are pretty damn awesome, I have to say. But yeah, this is a very nice and quite nostalgic smelling beer from me. So let me just break this down and explain to you exactly what I mean by that. So yeah, the backbone of this beer, you absolutely get a little bit of this sort of wholemeal brown bready bread crust in there. On top of that, there's a mix of like white and brown bread, but it gives you a kind of sweetness. It really does give you a little bit of sweetness, actually, which is quite interesting. So yeah, the sort of bready sweetness that you get out of this beer, I really do like. So you got bread crust, kind of thicker brown bread, a bit of white bread in there, and yeah, I think that goes together really, really well in this one. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah. On top of that, I do get little hints of a kind of woody, a sort of woody aroma coming out of this one, which is quite interesting. There's maybe a wee bit of a sort of crackery thing to it as well. But I also get little bits of kind of McVitie's digestive biscuit and things, and it's the kind of mix of biscuity and bready character that makes me think there's a bit of Maris Otter in there. But I know, I'm trying to remember, I think it was the Valhalla Brewery, and if I remember rightly, they are from Shetland rather than Orkney. But yeah, they have their own their own malt variety they produce and put in the beer, but it has this really distinctive kind of grainy, brown bready sort of aroma and taste, and this beer just really reminds me of that a little bit. So I wouldn't be surprised if there is some type of Scottish malt in this, either from the Highlands or from or from the island or from the islands itself. So yeah, that's really interesting with this one. I love the malt base in this. You'll know that if you've watched the channel for any length of time. I'm a sucker for a good malt base in a beer. I love the big kind of brown sugary ones, and because of that, I pay attention to the malt base in certain styles that a lot of people might just kind of overlook. But yeah, this one, it's a lovely kind of bread crusty, brown bready, you know, very slightly caramelly and McVitie's digestive biscuity malt base that you get out of this one. But I suspect there's a bit of Maris Otter in this. I wouldn't be surprised. It's just, there's just something telling me there's a wee bit of Maris Otter in this beer. But yeah, aroma wise, the malty side of this one is pretty nice. On the hoppy side of things, it is kind of what you'd expect. So for me, the hoppy side of the beer, there's a teeny little bit of earthiness in there, but the green component leans overwhelmingly towards a more floral character, but there's also a little bit of an oily, slightly zesty grassiness in this one. But yeah, the aroma that comes out of this, I think, the aroma that comes out on this beer goes together very, very well. So yeah, oily, yeah, a nice kind of oily floral aromat, it has got a bit of an oily character to it, but it has quite a nice deep but bright floral aromaticity to it. Some oily, grassy, zesty notes in there as well, and then behind that you've got all these nice fruity notes that we were talking about from the hops earlier on. So let's take a look at that. Yeah, on the fruity side of things with this one, it's really quite nice actually. I like how it goes together. You know, Citra, of course, is most of the beers that I'll be drinking with Citra and Eldorado in them these days are the modern New England IPAs. And as I've said before, these hops behave differently depending on what yeast you put them with and what malts you put them with, and so on. Now, to try Citra and Eldorado with a more kind of traditional Scottish or English malt base is quite unusual, but it's quite an oily malt base, this one. You know, it's a little bit more brown sugary, so it will be kind of akin to what we would get from like an old school West Coast IPA in that sense. The hops will be behaving similarly to what they would do in this style of beer, and you can smell that already. You're getting some of the really nice oily characters from the Citra. I can't remember how often I had Eldorado in a West Coast IPA, right enough, but yeah, you're getting to see a different side of the hops in this beer for sure. So on the fruity side of things, you can definitely smell a little bit of that slightly juicy, just the backbone. You're getting a little bit of that slightly juicy, very slightly red fruity backbone from the Cascade, and I love Cascade. One of my local breweries down here, Harveston Brewery, the Schiehallion, that's one of my go-to beers. I don't really session beer these days, but I love a Schiehallion when I come back to Scotland. And yeah, you can smell a little bit of that in this beer. Absolutely, you can smell a little bit of that distinctive, very slightly red fruity Cascade coming out of it. But yeah, on the tropical side of things, on top of that, you are getting a few other things. So for me, there is a good little bit of an oily passion fruit out of this one, and that's going to come both from the Citra and from the Eldorado. But big, juicy, oily mango, of course. And yeah, I actually get a little bit of a kind of lemony, limey character at this one. I feel it leans more towards quite a bright but quite oily lime, actually. So yeah, it's actually quite a straight shooting beer, this one. There's maybe a wee touch of gooseberry within that limey character as well, and that's something that Citra can give you in a slightly more biscuity, caramelly malt base like this. So yeah, this beer is showing some very interesting characteristics that I've not had in a good wee while, actually. So yeah, just bear that in mind with the when you have a smell of this one. Citra and Eldorado are showing you some characteristics that you'll not get to see all that often these days. So yeah, take a wee bit of time and just enjoy the aroma of this one. But this is for me, this is quite a nostalgic aroma that you get off of this. I really like it. So yeah, I think we are going to enjoy this beer. So yes, this one is the Island Life, a 3.7%. Session IPA or Paleo, we'll need to figure that out, from the Orkney Brewery in Coilou on the Orkney Islands here in Scotland. Let's get stuck into this one. Lovely aroma, take a bit of time to enjoy that before you taste the beer. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Yeah. That's pretty solid, I have to say. I'm going to say straight away, compared to what I remember of Northern Light. This one's kind of like Northern Light. I remember being a little bit more kind of bready and smooth and things like that. This one's got a little bit more of a kind of hoppy and zip to it, a little bit more of a hoppy bite and a kind of zip to it. So quite a different beer. But yeah, I really like how this beer goes about its business. That's for sure. Yeah, I've been getting more into these kind of session paleos and stuff like that recently. It's interesting. I can't really distinguish from the actual flavour whether it's a session IPA or a paleo. It certainly has a wee bit more hoppy bite to it than you would normally get from a paleo, I think. But the malt base, the kind of drinkability of it is more akin to a paleo. So it's got a bit of the hoppiness of an IPA, but the drinkability of a paleo, I think that's definitely a safe statement to make. But yeah, it's an interesting beer. It certainly is doing some quite nice stuff. So worth trying, that's for sure. It is worth trying. So, yeah, what can we say? Where can we start with this one? Overall, I would say it's quite a nice, slick. It's got a nice little bit of a kind of slick, malty oiliness to it, which I do enjoy. So yeah, a little bit of a slick malty oiliness in there. It's also got quite a nice big kind of floral character to it, and you've got some very nice. You do have some very nice kind of zesty fruity characters as well. So yeah, I really like. I do really like how this one goes about its business in that particular regard. Yeah. So it gets a big thumbs up from me in that sense. It gives you everything you would want from this style. But let's break it down and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth, as we would always do. So the border region between, the region, the middle third of your palate, we should say. The backbone of this beer, it's a lovely, it's got a lovely kind of little bit of that bread crusty backbone that we spoke about earlier, a little bit of a kind of brown bready sort of thing, but on top of that you get a nice crisp layer that has a mix of the brown bread, and then on top of that you get a little bit of a smoother, sweeter kind of white bready character out of this one, and it's the sort of white bready character that shows you a wee bit more of the kind of Maris Otter sort of thing. But I would actually say that this beer really does, the further you go into the aftertaste with it, it really does start to lean more toward the kind of hoppy side of things. This might well be the hoppiest beer that these guys have done, because their beers are always nice and balanced and drinkable. I think that's definitely fair to say. And this is quite different from the last one we had from these guys, was the Puffin, if I remember rightly, which was a tawny ale they called it, so I kind of like coppery, ambery ale, that one, and I enjoyed that. I did enjoy that. But yeah, on that white bready layer on top of that, you really start to feel the Maris Otter in there. I'm pretty certain there's a bit of Maris Otter in this beer. But yeah, you can feel on top of that smooth white bready layer, you've got a circle in the middle of your palate, so there's a wee bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing in there. On top of that, you've got a more oily, you do have a little bit of a more kind of oily, caramelly vibe to the beer as well, which I really like. So yeah, in the dead centre of your palate, there is a teeny little bit of a caramelly note there, and that's going to be the booziness from the beer, but this is 3.7%. You're not getting too much of that. So yeah, in the dead centre of your palate, you do get a wee bit of a concentrated, oily character to this one. And then as you move further and further out from that, you've got a little bit of a McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. So yeah, I do really enjoy how that goes together in this one. And again, that McVitie's digestive biscuity character is distinctive of the Maris Otter, actually. So yeah, this one gets a thumbs up from me in that particular context. So yeah, awesome stuff. Very nice stuff. I think other than that, toward the front of that middle third of your palate, you do get a slight little bit of a kind of woody undertone to it, but other than that, I don't think there's anything else we really need to report for it. So yeah, let's focus on the back third of the palate then with this one. So, back third of the palate then, you get that border region between middle and back third of your palate, a little bit of a bready build up in there. So I really like that, a little bit of breadiness, a little bit of a kind of a little bit of a more kind of grainy, brown bready character. And on the back third of the palate, you can certainly feel that bread crusty character gets distinctively more grainy, if you like. And remember that though, that bitter flavours, more grainy and bitter flavours come out toward the back of the palate, where the sweeter flavours come out further forward. So you've got a grainy bread crusty note there. On top of that, you've got a thicker brown bready, kind of brown bready character coming out of this one. So yeah, a little bit of a thicker kind of brown bready note to it, which is nice. And then you get a wee bit of the white bread sitting on top, but then on top of all of that you can detect a wee bit of the yeastiness, so you've got a more dense, slightly more doughy brown bready character in there. And yeah, you've got all that lovely kind of bread crusty vibe to it as well, which is nice. So yeah, the back third of the palate, the flavour is definitely taller. Then as you come further forward, it just condenses down a wee bit. It condenses down a wee bit and just squashes together into the further forward you go into that middle third of the palate. But I think that covers the malty yeasty side of things. Let's focus on the hoppy side of the beer. So back corners of the palate, there is a wee touch of earthiness there, but very, very minimal. Very very quickly you do get a little bit of bitterness coming out of this beer. So yeah, you can feel that nice deep floral aromaticity. To me, that indicates that there's been a little bit of early addition hopping in this one. I think this, with the depth of flavour you get out of that, I think there is early addition hopping. So remember, early addition hopping within the first kind of hour of the wort boil, that's the one that gives you most of the bitterness. The late addition hopping in the last half hour of the wort boil, that gives you mainly flavour and aroma, but also a little bit of bitterness. Then dry hopping is all about flavour and aroma. But West Coast IPAs use all three of those, whereas the New England IPAs tend to rely on late addition and dry hopping. I think this one has got maybe a wee bit of everything in it actually. So that's worth bearing in mind with this one. But yeah, you get a lovely deep floral aromatic character on the sides of your palate with this one. It gets a little bit spicy on the front corners of the tongue, but then round the front curve of the palate, it's a little bit lighter and more, kind of grassy actually. So yeah. So yeah, the floral aromaticity that you get in this really does just linger there, but I like the kind of grassy zestiness that the beer has too. But let's focus on the front third of your palate and the fruity side of things as well. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get a little bit of bready build up there. And the base of the front third of your palate has a nice wee smooth brown bready character to it as well. On top of that, you've got that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. And then at the back of that front third of your palate, you do get a nice little bit of an oily grapefruity sort of thing. And I think that's most likely to come from the Citra, but Cascade will of course contribute to that as well. But you can feel that the base of that back half of the front third of your palate, it does have a wee bit of that kind of just slightly figgy, red, very slightly red fruity sort of thing that you'll get from Cascade. That's forming the backbone of the beer. But on top of that, as I say, you get that stronger grapefruity character, you get a more oily passion fruit, and then a juicier mango as you come further forward from it. So yeah, that's all really quite interesting. As you move into the kind of front half of the front third of your palate, I think it's a wee bit more gooseberry-like, and this is the Citra that's going to give you that. So the tropical side of the beer is on the back half of that front third of your palate, but then as you move further forward, Citra is starting to show those more unusual characteristics that you only really get in a caramelly malt base. I should say caramelly biscuity malt base. But yeah, you certainly get a wee bit of like a gooseberry sort of thing, and then just behind the front tip of the tongue, it's a bit more sort of limey, I would say. So yeah, I do like how all of this, how all of that goes together in this particular beer. So it gets a thumbs up. It does get a thumbs up from me. Yeah, I do like how this one I do like how it goes about its business for sure in that sense. It's got a lovely oily fruity character to it. So yeah, a little bit of gooseberry and a little bit of lime on that front half of the front third of your palate. But I think that's everything we need to say about the flavour of this one. Let's round off with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel. So for me, it's quite a mid-bodied beer. The carbonation is quite smooth. It's got a lovely kind of oily slickness to it. In terms of hoppy bitterness, yeah, in terms of hoppy bitterness, I would say I think this one's maybe got about 25 or 30 IBUs. It does have a fair wee bit of bitter kick to it. But I think it kind of works with this one. I think this is the most hoppy beer I've had from Orkney Brewery before. But the malty side of things, yeah, it's got quite a bit of graininess to it, but it's also got a bit of smoothness. And I think the more you drink of it, the more the kind of oily side of the beer comes out, and that gives you a wee bit more sweetness. But you've also got some nice kind of oily, zesty, fruity characters in this beer as well, which come out a wee bit later. But there's a wee bit of tropical fruit in there as well. But overall, as a session IPA or paleo type thing, I think it works quite nicely. So it gets a thumbs up from me. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this review then. This was the Island Life, a session IPA from Orkney Brewery on the Orkney Islands, yeah. I think the malt base in this one is a little bit like a paleo, but it has the hoppiness of a session IPA. I think that's a fair assessment of this one. We were talking about that earlier on in the video. But anyway, another nice beer. I wouldn't hesitate to drink it again. That's for sure. But yeah, as I say, the Orkney Brewery are known for their kind of nice drinkable session beers, so give them a go and see what you think. But yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from the Orkney Brewery as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the near future. But until the next time, slàinte, skål, cheers, and see you guys in the next review.